today's project we'll be making felted soap, and I made my soap rounds beforehand. This is a milk and honey, which I like a lot in felted soap because it's a very hard soap. It doesn't dissolve very easy in the wet soaping felting process. And to help the wool felt to wrap around without poking through, I will be removing all these sharp edges. It doesn't really matter what kind of soap you use when you do this yourself. Handmade, not handmade. The best idea is to use a soap that is hard so it doesn't dissolve as quickly in the felting process. Some of the hot processed soaps, they don't stand up too well. So I tend to go with this one because I know it works. Commercially made soaps are often hardened, so they work very well. That's why they don't dissolve on your soap dish, because they have something added to it to prevent that. Doesn't matter what shape it is. I like rounds, but also I have the mold, so I like using mold. You can use ovals, you can use squares, rectangles. The only thing you want to watch out for is sharp angles, which is why I'm taking them all off. And don't worry, these soap noodles, they will be reused. I make soap balls out of them. I make rebatched soap where I recook it again. They will not be dumped. This is fairly fresh soap, which is why it's so easy to grate. It's still a little pliable. It's about a month old. I prefer to have older soap for this, like several months old. And I normally have these rounds in storage, in inventory, curing especially for this, but I ran out this year. They've been selling too well, so I will be making some more. The soap itself is good. It doesn't really matter how old it is. It's just that the older and harder it is, the less you lose in the wet felting process. I'll be using a laundry machine, a washing machine, to help do the felting process. Which is why I want to make sure that everything is just right, so I get the best soap in the end that I can. So the next step is to wrap some wool, and I like to use a plain coarse wool for the first layer. Cheap. It makes a good foundation. And then add some nice embellishments. Put on some red. Maybe some green. A little bit of brown. And this will give a nice pattern. But while this will make a nice felted soap, you could do this by hand. Make it wet, hot and cold, massage it. It'll take a while. So I'm doing it by machine, and I need a stocking for that. So I'll put this in the bottom. You want to put it in real carefully, so you don't force off the roving at the bottom. I'm pushing back any roving that's pushed up because I don't want it to get into the knot, and when I feel it's empty I turn it, I put a knot in, go down all the way so it's nice and tight. And that looks good. Good wools to use for felted wool are wools that are coarser than average, so things that would normally not be so favorable for sweaters and things that touch the skin because they're itchy. They actually make really nice felted soap rovings. roving that is really smooth is not so nice actually, because you don't get that exfoliating effect that soap balls are used for. It's a, there, nice. I mean, the whole point is to get a nice scrub. Felted soap is like having a washcloth incorporated onto the outside of your soap and a scrub. So it's a little bit like a loofah, only a loofah is on the inside, and loofahs like to discolor quite quickly. Wool and felted soap doesn't discolor as quick because wool is naturally antimicrobial and it doesn't harbor bacteria as much as loofahs will do. When using this in the shower or in the kitchen, the trick is to keep them dry, to let them dry out between use. But that's the trick with any handmade soap actually, because we don't have chemical hardeners added for a reason. No need in adding any more chemicals in our diet and in our environment than we already have. There, add that in here. Always concentrating to make sure there's no little umbilical cord sticking in there, because you want a nice smooth outer edge. There. So the neat thing of the felted soaps is not only that they work as a really nice scrub, but they also they save the soap longer. The suds of the soap, which normally get rinsed away, are captured within the felt, and you don't clean the soap in between uses. You just put it down on your dish and let it dry, and your soap will last so much longer. It is quite amazing. One thing to realize is that there's different types of soap of felting techniques. There's two types. There's needle felting, abrasive felting, and there is wet felting that uses hot and cold and water, liquid, to felt. We are doing the wet felting, the natural felting. So, 5 soaps ready to go. Ready for the next step. I don't want to do 6, even though I could possibly get another one in, but we have another step after that, and then they won't fit in my socks. So I'll just keep going. It's kind of therapeutic. There. So the thing with the wet felting is that, unlike needle felting, where people make beautiful little sculptures and face expressions, little animals, and they can do all kinds of things, it's a little difficult doing that with this, because with the wet felting we don't know real well where the color is going to end up, especially since I'm using a washing machine. There is a lot of tumbling and abrasion, and that's how the felting works. It's a matter of abrasive rubbing in an alkaline environment, the soap, which is hot and cold to shock the fibers into clinging, felting, shrinking into each other. So that's why felting soap is really easy, because you already have the alkaline environment by having soap. Well, hot and cold is easy. I just tell my machine to go hot and cold. And the abrasiveness, well, that's kind of built right in too. And that's how the machine gets the clothes clean. And that's why felting soap is a great beginning felting process for kids, because it's really hard to mess up. So you get really pretty results and they can use it. And I don't know about your kids, but my kid can use any excuse to use more soap. So if that means making some felt together, so he has his own personal body soap, I'm all happy. So there's different types of wool roving. I mentioned that a little bit earlier. The Shetland, the more natural or earlier, the more historic the breed, the rougher the wool tends to be. They have more kemp, more of the rougher fibers. And I find with the felted soaps that's actually a plus. It scrubs better. So one of the felt fibers that I really enjoy, it's a little hard to get because it is a bit of a, you just gotta have a breather in your area, but Icelandic wool makes phenomenal felted soap. Great rub. So Icelandic wool is probably my favorite, but the roving is rather expensive, so I don't tend to get a lot of it. But sometimes I do. And then I make some soaps for personal use. 2 more, and then I have the first 10 ready. So to keep in mind when you start using the machine is to use a, and I'll show it in the video as well, so you'll get a little bit more detail. With the big trick with felting in the machine is that, like I mentioned, the soap dissolves a little bit, and you want to keep as much of it as you can in here. You don't want to lose too much. So if your machine has a quick setting, then you can felt with it. You can felt soap with it. You can always felt with it, but you can felt soap with it. So what I started using is the quick setting with the hot cold. And I also, to give it protection, because this is quite unprotected when it goes in the machine, and I have a front loader, so it rolls like that. And it tumbles around and it makes a lot of noise and it gets all dented. So I give it a protection. I put it in large, tall winter socks. And that's why I can only do them 5 high, because my socks aren't any higher, any taller. And I secure them with a little elastic band so they don't roll out in the process. And that works really surprisingly well. But you can't put too many in, so I tend to do only, what is it? 5, maybe 6 socks at a time. And I stick them in with towels. And that works well. If you do too many, again, they tangle into each other and they start to bang to each other, and then they get all banged up, they get dented. And they look better and feel better when they're still round. So that's about it on the preparation. Next up we'll be seeing how to wash them, which is pretty straightforward. And then it is how will they come out? They always look so like full of promise, but you never quite know until it's all said and done. So that'll be the next step. Running them through the laundry. My little soaping buddy. Here we have 5 strings of prepared felted soaps, and to run them through the laundry safely, we insulate them. This is just a matter of putting them in some sturdy socks. Go down. I always secure the top one with an elastic just to make sure that it doesn't sneak out during the tumbling. And this trick, plus using the quick setting, are pretty much the biggest things that you need to know for using your laundry machine to do the felting for you. Oh, one quick thing about different types of wool. I didn't think of it because I normally don't buy synthetics, but synthetics don't felt because it's not wool. Felting is specifically something from natural fibers. Human hair will felt. There's all kinds of different things that will felt, but they're natural. Synthetics can felt, but for that you need to use the needle felting technique, because that is actually done by tangling, not by the natural process of the hair becoming scaly like Velcro, so it sticks, and then shrinking, so it sticks together. It tangles naturally. So if you have merino or merino superwash, which is made not to felt during laundry, then it won't work. Certain sheep breeds felt better than others. If you want to check before you do a whole load, felt a little bit in your hands and see what happens. Friction and heat with a little bit of lubrication, some water, some spit, whatever. Rub it and see if it felts before you do a whole bunch and find it actually didn't work. And there, that's it. 5 babies ready to go. It's the next day and my felted soaps are all done felting. I waited for the big reveal until I had good light to share how they came out with you. Oh, that's starting to look good. Looks like I've got some good colors going. There's a little bit of felting through. Oh, this one had a bump, so the soap was a little wet. So while it's still wet, just push it back in shape. So this one probably hit the edge. And next is we get some scissors and we clip them off. And same as with felted dryer balls, pull them out and clip them so you don't clip your felted outside. And it's a lot easier to peel off because they've only gone through one cycle, and they only need to go through one cycle because every time they're used, the felting will keep happening. So there you go. One felted soap. Ooh, I really like those colors. And keep in mind to pull. You see how that work goes? If you pull that, it pulls right off. So you want to pull with the edging. And it doesn't matter if it's a little loose, as like I said, every time it gets used, it will just keep on felting. Now, isn't that pretty? Here's another one that's felted with just an itty bitty tiny cord. Now it's all gone. Ooh, look at that. Ah. So I always like to check them out. Make sure they look yummy and scrumptious. So people will be happy with them. And I think we got a delightful batch this time. There's another one. Fuzz it up a little bit of a buzz cut, rub it a bit. Yeah, I think it'll work. But I would suggest to, if you want to run them through again, don't run them through now. Let them dry out completely and then run them through, because you don't want your soap to be already wet when it goes in, because it's much more likely to dissolve much more than it needs to. And the more it dissolves, the less soap you're left with. And you have a very clean laundry, but you won't have a lot of felted soap.